Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will be talking about documentation. This is a presentation made by me, Muhammad Adam, and Manas Abilas. So, why do we want to do documentation? Documentation is needed due to the fact that sometimes the programs that we make are very complex. The source code may also have very big libraries that a single person cannot memorize alone, unless you are the lead developer. But even sometimes the lead developer may not remember all the modules of the system. Sometimes the modules and the arguments needed for the modules don't naturally click in for the others, and hence you need the documentation. Now, how does a normal documentation file look like? An example of documentation is the Discord developer portal, in where they have the disclaimer, the reference, and the structure of all the commands. What do most documentation files contain? Most of them, mainly in the technical documentation, have the coding language that they are programmed in, cited somewhere. They also have the hardware and software requirements to run the program. Can be both in the user and the technical documentation. They have a reference sheet to the used variables in the program, which is in the technical documentation. And some of the documentation are on the error messages and what they mean. As in, if you get this error message, that means that you did something wrong. But most of the time, they will not tell you how to fix it because they are the program and not a coder. You also have any systems that are using hierarchical programming, and that means that they will have the parent, child, and grandchild structure cited somewhere in the system documentation. Now, how do you read the documentation? Most of the time, the documentation should be easy to read, as it was written with the intent of letting others to understand. But sometimes you may need to know the terms which developers group up all these systems or modules together, so that it is easier to find the modules that you want to use. You can also use the search function on most text editing software to find the main words in your documentation. Now, how do you write documentation? When writing documentation, you must keep in mind that the documentation file is for others, or for you that has forgotten already the code in the system, so that you can understand and use the program. Make sure the variable names and glossaries are not confusing, especially if the variable names are not straightforward. Now, this one will come in your implementation and your testing stage of the system lifecycle, because if you were to use the same name for something, there may be something wrong and you'll get an error in testing. Ensure that the file is easy to navigate and that you group up the functions to be referenced easily, so then you don't spend time trying to find a module that is a part of 100 lines. Now, there are two types of documentation. As stated before, we have user documentation, which is made to help users, the front-end users, learn how to use the system or software. And most of the time, it consists of the following: how to load, install, and run the software, which you'll have at the when you install, they'll have the disclaimer or the tab showing you how to install, what to load, and what to do to install. How do you save the files? Most of the time, you can go online and they'll show you how to do search, which also online, how to sort the data, how to do printout, how to add, delete, or amend records, the purpose of the system, program software package, limitations of the system, screen layouts, which is the input format, and the print layouts, which is the output format. The second type of documentation is the technical documentation. It is designed for the back-end developers or analysts to make improvements to the system or to repair or maintain the system. And the examples of technical documentation is as follows. program listing slash coding, programming language used, program flowcharts, algorithms, the system's flowchart, purpose of the system, program software, which is the same as the user documentation, the limitations of the system, so that you do not push the system over the limit, the input formats, the hardware requirements, and the software requirements, and sometimes the minimum memory requirements. Thank you so much.